It is 12:06 p.m. on July 17th, 2024. This is the Transportation Advisory Board to the Metropolitan Council. Meeting being called to order, and is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Anderson.
Winchell, second.
All right. Anderson, Winchell, second. Any further discussion relative to the agenda? All those in favor of adopting the agenda as published, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The agenda is adopted. Do we have anyone in the public that wishes to address the Transportation Advisory Board on a matter of concern to them? Okay, I see no one coming forward. We'll move on. Tab Chair's report, just a brief one. Do we have a slide?
I think there was a.
Oh, let's get this slide up. Well, first of all, we just had a policymaker work group. That was our second meeting. And so we're working on some of the kind of the pre-regional solicitation issues, and more to come on that. It was a really productive meeting, so thanks to those members of the TAB that are participating there. And then our colleague George Schember, we got a email from him, Elaine and I, and this is his encounter outside of Columbia Falls, Montana. He's back on the road again on another ride across the United States on his bike with his wife. This time they're attempting to go from Anacortes, Washington to Bar Harbor, Maine. And they were currently in Columbia Falls, Montana when they sent us the email. That took him 2 weeks to get to Columbia Falls, Montana. And then he met this group passing near the Kunsa-Usa Lake, Montana pass. And he says a friendly sheriff used his truck to help us pass by the bighorn sheep. So I don't know if he was worried about him or not, but he got by him okay. So our best thoughts are with George. I thought everybody would like to see this photo of him again, his encounter with the bighorn sheep. That's it for me. Connie, where are you? There you are, right next to me. Would you care to report out for MnDOT?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple of things. First of all, I'm sure you've noticed that there's a lot of construction going on around the metro area, and it's coordinating with our local agencies who also do projects, and we do a lot of that before we start, and sometimes things wires gets crossed, but please be patient with us. I get a lot of, my email especially gets a lot of hits for various reasons. There's always reasons for why we do things, and I hope you can talk with your constituents and remind them to take their time. If there's construction, the best thing to do is just avoid it completely if you can go a different way. But they do their best to do their staging, and when you stage, of course, things get. It's not like it always is. I actually you can see my bike and pet friend sitting right beside me. I've been communicating with some of bike and pet advocates about a certain project where they were really disappointed about us wanting to close it, and it's a connecting community project, and we're actually working with them just like a highway project, so I hope people realize that we're trying our best to be. We are a Department of Transportation, and hope you can calm folks down about their thoughts about what MnDOT is and what we do, and we take all modes very seriously. I was going to give some safety numbers, but all I know is that it's gotten worse just very recently, fatalities, but I don't have any numbers, so I don't, but all I can say is to continue to be safe. A short message, last one, Mr. Chair, I had one of my direct reports, a good close friend of mine, Scott Patterson. He was a long-time MnDOT employee. He was going to be 56 July 22nd, and unexpectedly he took his dog out for a walk. He lives up in St. Michael. He happens to be a council member with Cecilia St. Michael as well. That just dropped and gone, and so it made us all reprioritize our lives and what's important. And I hope everybody else does that too. I just want to take this moment for everyone to get their checkups and go to the doctor and do whatever you need and be healthy. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Connie, for that. I don't see anybody from MPCA here.
The email, they will not be here.
Oh, okay. So neither Frank nor Todd are with us today, and so I'll turn to Carl Crimmins, our colleague, who will give out a MAC report. And I see you're getting some good publicity in the paper about volumes of
Yes, sir.
passengers through there.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple items I have. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Right now, our domestic travel is 105% of the 2019 level, and international travel is 101% of 2019 level. Just the July 4th weekend, the TSA reported 50,000 people through security on 2 different days, 50,000 each day for 2 days. This is the busiest summer in the last 5 years. T2 travel is up 23% over last year. And road construction has been mentioned on Highway 55, 494, eastbound 62 highway, and Highway 5. It's naturally causing disruptions, so we're asking people before you come to the airport, try to go to the airport website. There'll be updates on travel and travel times, and hopefully get some information before you leave. Make sure you leave early enough. The other thing, we've installed some Pentair water refill stations to stop single-use plastic bottles. And so far, we've registered 100,000 refills in Terminal 1 in the last month and a half.
Fantastic.
So that's 100,000 bottles of water that we didn't sell, but people are filling up on them. So that's a good thing. We're hoping to expand those and have more of those throughout the terminal. And then, as you mentioned, Travel and Leisure Magazine rated us as the top North American airport in #1. So
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say about that. It speaks for itself. You know, the staff does a heck of a job with concessions and the cleanliness and stuff. So we appreciate the fact that people recognize that and reward us with awards, you know.
And that was the North American Award, top.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, well, congratulations again. Anybody have any questions for Member Crimmins? Yes, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to add on to the compliments to Commissioner Crimmins. I live in Eagan, and our Eagan Magazine has a very laudatory article about the airport, and I'll get you a signed copy. No, I'll give it to you after the meeting.
Member Bradley?
Yes, I was wondering, I guess it was maybe like a week ago or so, there was a security incident at the airport where it shut down for like a half hour. Was there a way to let the travelers that were on the way there know?
They probably could have. They had a bag that was left unattended. So security came and they had to evacuate the area, the gate in the area and half the terminal. They had to stop people from coming in. And all it was an unattended bag. There was nothing, it was nothing suspicious inside it, but somebody walked off and left their bag, you know. So it disrupted everybody's travel. I don't know how many people missed flights because of that. Somebody just, I don't know, I guess they just didn't care, you know. I've noticed it myself walking through the airport, we're going to meetings, you'll see a bag sitting on a chair and nobody's there. And I have to go get security and bring them over there. And by the time I get over there, somebody's coming out of the bathroom. So, oh, that's my bag. Well, why would you just leave it there? Why wouldn't you take it with you? But I guess there's nothing in there worth stealing, so they do. They just leave it there. So, but that's what happened. It was a bag, a suspicious bag.
Follow on, Member Bradley? Okay, good. All right, thanks for that explanation. I think we were all kind of curious about that. We saw some film footage on it, and it really created quite a controversy out there. So let's then move on to our colleague Deb Barber, and from the Met Council's perspective, what do you have to report on?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things today. One thing is that the Met Council and the FTA have prepared the supplemental draft environmental impact statement for the Metro Blue Line Extension Project. This document evaluates the potential social, economic, and environmental benefits and impacts that may occur because of the design, construction, and operation of the Blue Line Extension. and outlines potential measures to avoid or reduce those impacts. I'm mentioning it right now because it's out for public comment right now. We had the first of 2 public hearings last night. The next public hearing will be on Tuesday, July 23rd from 10 till noon. However, we will continue to accept comments all the way through August 6th, and they can be submitted online or recorded or emailed to the Blue Line ext@metrotransit.org, and they will all be compiled into the public comment report. Today, we're taking some action on the TPP here. There'll be subsequent actions at Transportation Committee and Council next week, and that's really opening it up for public comment period. So then I would encourage all of your communities and organizations to comment on the TPP. We want to make sure we put a lot of work into this document. A lot of people around the table here helped out, and we want to see what the communities think and see if there are other improvements that we can make to the plan. And then finally, I'm just going to make a little editorial comment for Connie. MnDOT, I travel along 494 often, and I will say, for the amount of construction that's going on down there, I've been very impressed with the staging and the ability to move through that stretch. It could be tough in normal times, and it's actually been very, very good. So, kudos to MnDOT for kind of keeping things moving down there.
Thank you so much. That made my day.
I would echo that. I went through there today, planning a lot of extra time to get here, and I was here a half an hour early because I flew through there that I didn't expect to do, so it's awesome.
Maybe a quick follow-up, Mr. Chair. That's a $390 million project that goes all the way to 35W, and then you'll see all kinds of interchange there. And then the next, that'll be for another 2 years, and then the next phase, that's, we're going to be announcing soon, is from there all the way to 77. So the airport's still going to be impacted, so it'll be going on for a while, but that project has been on the books for 25, 30 years, so. Wow. Anyway.
How much does that cost gone up in 25 years?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Member Barber, anything further? All right, any questions for Member Barber? Comments? All right. Gary Hansen, our member colleague, Suburban Transit Authority report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Suburban transit providers' ridership continues to increase, particularly special services. And an example of that is Minnesota Valley Transit Authority provided more than 30,000 rides over 8 days through emergency shuttle service to Valley Fair due to the flooding that occurred in the Valley Fair parking lot. And so that's an example of a partnership that worked well in Valley Fair's time of need. You may have seen that Southwest Transit is purchasing autonomous vehicles for use in its prime ride-on-demand service. It's anticipated that during the first 2 years, an operator will be on board to assist riders as needed. And in an effort to improve cost effectiveness, Plymouth Metrolink is evaluating downsizing to smaller buses for certain fixed routes, depending on demand. And I think that's probably an option that you'll see other providers considering going forward. That's my report.
Questions for Member Hansen as a result of that report? All right, thank you for that. Chair Hager from TAC, anything you run a report on from a TAC perspective? Okay, we'll have you up with us momentarily. We've got minutes for the, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say that this is Trista's last meeting, and we have really enjoyed her service representing Ramsey County very well. I really appreciate your great colleague. Thanks for all the interactions I had throughout this time here, and I wish you the best of luck.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And Commissioner McGuire will be back with you as my replacement. So Ramsey County will still be represented, and she's an old seasoned TAB member.
Tell us where you're going.
Yes.
Tell us what's next for you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you may have heard, I actually have resigned as commissioner. So no longer as an elected official as of August 1st. And then August 2nd, I'm starting a new position as the executive director for the Ramsey Washington Recycling and Energy Center. So I'm trading in politics for garbage.
Good jokes in there. Yeah, but it's an environmental area that you've had great
Exactly.
passion for.
Very much so.
around, all things environmental related. So,
Yes, exactly.
yeah, sure. That was a big decision.
It was a big decision. I'll tell you, probably no one more surprised than myself when I had the opportunity, but really excited to see where we can take from garbage to green energy and hopefully hydrogen in the very near future.
Always seen your passion for all of your work here, but especially, I think, environmental related
Yes.
work, and appreciate it, and have come to understand how much you care about that work.
Yeah.
So the best to you.
Thank you.
On that endeavor, yeah. All right, thanks for that too, Commissioner,
Thank you.
for that heads up. I didn't realize that this was your last meeting, so
Yes.
I'm glad we found that out. Nothing from Chair Hager, and then we've got minutes, approval.
Approval, Anderson?
All right.
Second, Wind Shuttle.
June 12th, 2024 minutes, no changes, additions, they've been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the meeting minutes for June 12th, 2024, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Minutes are adopted from the June 12th, 2024 meeting at the tab. And now we're going to bring Chair Hager up here for the consent items and some other things as well, and she can lead us through those.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Starting with 2024-33, which is a streamlined TIP amendment to the 2024 to 2027 TIP for MnDOT's Minnesota 121 and CASA 22 improvements project. The amendment is related to an increase in cost for the overlay project, a technical correction to the project's location description, and adding a new project that is related and will improve safety at the westbound Highway 62 loop at Minnesota 121. The project's funded with a combination of federal, state, and local funds and is not a regional solicitation project. The project cost is increasing from $1.6 million to $2.1 million. And the new project being added is an HSIP project, not part of the regional competitive HSIP program, that will expand a concrete median island and clarify lane geometry. The cost of the new project is $28,000, funded with a combination of federal and state funds, and TAC unanimously recommends approval of this TIP amendment.
All right, good. Any questions on 33?
I'll move it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second?
Second, Bingham.
Thank you, Bingham. All right. We got a motion and a second on adoption of 2024-33. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the recommended motion with respect to 2024-33, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. 2024-23 is adopted. All right, 2024-34.
2024-34 is another streamlined TIP amendment to the 2024 to 2027 TIP for MnDOT's I-94 over County Road 19 bridge construction project in Wright County. The project is currently in the TIP in fiscal year 2024. The amendment is to move the project from 24 to 25 and increase the cost of the project by $4 million. This project is not part of the regional solicitation and is funded in part with Corridors of Commerce and Bridge Formula funds, and TAC unanimously recommends approval of this TIP amendment.
Questions for the chair on this matter? Someone care to move it?
I'll move. Thank you.
Second?
All right, we've got a motion by member DeGan, second. All right, Commissioner, seconds. Martinson, and that's on 2024-34. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of 2024-34, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. 2024-34 is adopted in its recommended form. Thank you. I know we could have taken those both in a single motion, but I think it's good to go through them individually as well. So thanks for those consent agenda items getting handled so quickly. Non-consent business. Now we're going to move on to the regionally significant TIP amendment request, Corridor of Commerce Project 2024-21.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. So I'm starting to become somewhat of a familiar face, but I'm Robbie King. I am with MTS here at the council. I work for Steve Peterson.
Nice to have you with us, Mr. King. Thank you.
Item 2024-21 is for the Transportation Advisory Board to accept public comment report and recommend adoption of an amendment to the 2024-2027 TIP to add a regionally significant project expanding US 10 from 2 to 3 lanes in Coon Rapids. So this regionally significant project will expand US 10 from 2 to 3 lanes, also add ultra-thin bonded course to existing mainline pavement, and construct noise walls from CASA 78 Hanson Boulevard to CASA 9 Round Lake Boulevard in Coon Rapids. The project is funded through $2.5 million from the FHWA, $30 million in state legislative appropriation during the 2023 session, and $8 million through the Corridors of Commerce program. At the May TAB meeting, an item to release this TIP amendment for public comment for 21 days was approved, and the public comment period concluded on June 6th. A total of 9 comments were received, 7 expressed opposition to the amendment, and 2 expressed support. We recommend acceptance of the public comment and adoption of the TIP amendment for these reasons. The project has been through the TAC-TAB process as part of the 2040 TPP Amendment Number 2 that was approved by Council on December 13th, 2023. The project has proven physical constraint, and an opportunity for public comment was provided. So the recommended motion in front of you is that the Transportation Advisory Board accept the public comment report and recommend adoption of an amendment to the 2024-2027 TIP to add a regionally significant project expanding US 10 from 2 to 3 lanes in Coon Rapids. And I'll stand for any questions.
All right, very good, yeah. Questions for Mr. King? Comments regarding this project? Yes. Member Geisler.
So as a resident of Coon Rapids, we're excited to see this. I know there's not necessarily, the city is one comment on the entry there. Many of the citizens, though, have already expressed their commentary through this whole process leading up into this. This is the last step of it. This will connect multiple cities to the Riverdale Commerce Center and will help with some congestion mitigation along this corridor, as well as our growing communities to the north in the county. So this is a great step. So with that, I would move this item if I could.
All right, let's move the matter and then.
Mr. Chair,
Jepson.
I'll second the motion.
Right. And then we'll go to discussion. Any comment, Commissioner Jepson?
I'll wait to hear what other people say.
Right. Member Saibram, you had a comment.
Yeah,
You had-
I had just a question. What is to me, 7 out of 9 is like a groundswell. Curious what the flavor of the opposition was. Do you have that information?
Yeah. So opposition comments expressed concern with lane expansion projects resulting in increase in vehicle miles traveled and a desire to divert those funds to transit, bike, and pedestrian projects.
Thank you.
Member Martinson and then Commissioner Goodell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll be voting to approve this because it has met all the requirements. But I would like to note that, in fact, there is no objective evidence that adding lane miles like this to a highway does anything in the long term to reduce congestion or improve traffic flows. So until we get some data that actually is the case, I don't think we will, because induced demand always results in VMT miles ramping up to meet the capacity that's been provided. I don't support these kinds of projects in general, but I'll be voting for this simply because it's met all of the technical criteria that it needs to meet to be included in the TIP.
Thank you, Member Martinson. Member Goodell, Commissioner.
Thank you. I just want to also say that I'm actually very supportive of this. And I can see, if you've ever driven up there, around that whole area.
You pull that microphone a little bit closer.
And it's a nightmare up there, and there's a lot of concern, I think, about safety up there when you look at the growth that's going to happen, and that's an economic hub up there, trying to make that work a little bit better, and they anticipate a huge amount of growth up there. And so while I'm not always in favor of adding a lane, I think this might do something. There's an awful lot of truck traffic up there, and this can be very scary. I've driven that particular area, and at this time, I think anything we can do, because I'm sure there's going to be additional safety features that are going to be added along the way to make this a much better road and a much safer road. So that's my comments, and I intend on support.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jepson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, there's a lot of conversation going around VMT and GHG right now, and you know, separating ourselves from that focus and that priority of the conversation. But I just want to make mention that even though there were 7 negative comments and 2 positive comments, the county, Anoka County, the city of Coon Rapids, MnDOT, we all do our due diligence. Us as policymakers have to go through certain steps, and the feedback and the comments, this is just one component, but we have all done our due diligence in knowing that this is a have to instead of a need, instead of a nice to. This will definitely help the region, not just to the surrounding areas for shopping and commuting and stuff like that, but to the North Metro, to the cabins, to the recreation up north that everyone will take. So we are very excited. This is the last leg of this project that has already seen some extreme benefits to removing stoplights, congestion, and traffic flow. So I would appreciate everyone's support of this because it is a much, much needed addition. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We've got a motion and a second on the adoption of 2024-21 in its recommended form. Hearing no.
I drive the area quite a bit. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well needed. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, that completes our discussion. All those in favor of adopting Action Transmittal 2024-21 in its recommended form, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Recommended, the action, the 2024-21 Action Transmittal is approved in its recommended form. Thank you. Next is 2024-30, and we've got Jenny Hager and Cole Henniker are going to handle this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll briefly introduce this item, and then Cole is going to provide a presentation on it. The recommended motion before you is that the draft 2050 Transportation Policy Plan be released for public review and comment, and I'll just note that TAC was unanimous in their recommendation in favor of that.
All right, very good. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Henniker, welcome.
Thank you. And we're going to be brief today because we did an info item last month for all of you that were here. I'm going to do a quick reminder on what we're doing with this action, a little bit on the process, and then Sarah's going to talk just briefly about some of the public engagement techniques we're going to use. So a note, here's where we are in the release schedule. We're at tab today. If you all recommend this item, it'll be going to Transportation Committee at the Met Council on Monday, and then it'll be ultimately going to the full council on August 14th with the public comment period starting the following day on August 15th, and that's tentatively scheduled to go through early October. So it's about 45 days? 45 days. We showed you this slide last time, but just a reminder on all the work that we did. It was a multi-year process to develop the TPP, lots of collaborative discussions with our partners and information that fed into the TPP. So just a reminder here. And that we did do that early engagement with both the TAC and with you all to give you an opportunity to review the drafts before we got to this point. And during that process, we received over 3,000 comments from our partners, and we made revisions. As Jenny noted, the TAC did pass this unanimously. One note at TAC planning level, they did have some comments for us to look at the 2024 legislative session, see if any language in the TPP needed to be tweaked, which was good feedback. We did make a few tweaks after TAC planning to acknowledge some of the changes to legislation that occurred in the 2024 session, mostly clarifications around the GHG emissions, state law, as well as some things that happen in the transit sphere from a policy perspective. Nothing that changed the list of projects or any of the funding categories or anything like that, just kind of declarative stuff. Couple of notes on the public comment draft and potential changes that may occur while it's out for public comment before the next version comes back to tab. There is going to be some language alignment. You might see some things tweaked just because we are still waiting on the final drafts of some of the other system plans, like the land use policy plan, the parks policy plan. And so we want to make sure that when we release all those, that we have the language as aligned as possible. There might be some edit or corrections that we might still catch during the public comment period. We are still working on some graphics. We might be able to put a few in by August 15th, but otherwise there's placeholders in the documents now for a lot of graphics and images and charts that weren't able to be finalized in some cases. And then just a note that we do have a performance outcome chapter that talks about what the plan does for the system and our performance measures. We likely will have to rerun some of the modeling results because Through the public comment process for the regional development guide, we get comments on the forecasts, and we might tweak forecasts here and there, the allocation of growth in the region. And so we rerun the model to reflect the latest forecasts that are available after the public comment period and incorporate those results. Typically, those changes are not substantial. We don't expect significant changes, but just an FYI there. We did get a question about past experience in public comment, so just wanted to give you all a heads up. In 2014, which is the last major update of the TPP, we received comments from 126 commenters. You can see the breakdown by type of commenter there, and approximately 880 comments. Now that's just specific to the transportation policy plan. There were other comment processes for the other system plans like Thrive MSP 2040 and the other system plans. In 2018, when we were just doing an update of the TPP, somewhat of a minor update, we received comments from over 200 commenters and approximately 419 comments. So that gives you a flavor of what you might see in this comment period. We obviously can't predict exactly how many comments we're going to get. When the comment period is over, we do come back to tab, both for an information item on the comments that we heard and our proposed responses, as well as a subsequent action to ask you all to recommend the final adoption. And that is unique to a transportation policy plan update, a new plan. It comes back to tab before it goes to the council for final adoption. So we anticipate that to occur probably around December or January, but it really depends on the nature of the comments that we get and how elaborate our response needs to be. So that's going to be the next step for you all in this process, other than, of course, providing your own public comments. And with that, I'll let Sarah talk a little bit about the public engagement strategy.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, members. I am Sarah Maskey. I work in communications here at the Met Council, and I support transportation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the overall engagement strategies for Imagine 2050. So we're focusing on closing the feedback loop. We've had a lot of stakeholders that have been engaged over the process with all of the different plans, and we want to make sure that we're going back to them and so that they have a chance to see how their input was reflected in the plans. We're looking at providing new feedback into Imagine 2050, both before and during the public comment period. We're going to engage existing and new stakeholders with Social Pinpoint, which is our online engagement platform. So we're in testing with that right now, and hopefully everything goes well, and we'll be able to launch that within the next few weeks. We're going to identify new opportunities for engagement in both in-person, online, and in partnerships with organizations that represent some of the key audiences and stakeholders. We have a tribal liaison now. I think you might have met Allison at some point. She is going to be conducting the tribal outreach, and that's going to include consultation, collaboration, and coordination across the tribal nations. And then council member outreach and engagement will be collaborating with the council member outreach team to provide council members with materials and information to go out when they're out in their districts. So just to give you a taste of some of the tactics, so our Met Council channels will be using the website and Social Pinpoint, which is the online engagement platform, video, newsletter, Gov Delivery, which is our email push system, social media, Facebook, Instagram, and X, and then both our internal newsletters and MetNet for reaching our internal audiences. Events, we're building a traveling toolkit as we speak that will have materials that people can take out with them into the community when they're out there. We have Art Plus Policy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's an initiative that is engaging artists to visualize our plan and put it out there in community. And they're helping us engage with people that they are closely connected with. Community-based events, we have a variety of those coming up. One example is the Monarch Festival that's coming up, so we'll be out tabling at events. And of course, the public hearing, which is the formal process that we do here at the council. For promotion, we're doing the Art Plus Policy bus wraps, traditional and cultural media. We're looking at advertising opportunities where applicable. And just kind of general visibility when our chair and council members are out in the community at county visits or district convenings. Our regional administrator, when he is out talking to groups, making sure that he has what he needs to be able to engage those audiences with the content. Staff to local government partners, so we rely a lot on our internal relationships to make sure that the information is getting out to our local government partners. And again, closing that feedback loop with some of the early plan outreach that we've done, and then the tribal outreach. And that is all I have for you today, and I will stand with Phil for any questions.
I'm just going to add one more note too on that traveling toolkit. I've seen some of the draft materials from them, and they're 1 or 2 pagers that you all might be able to utilize if you're going to partners to help explain it. But we also are going to produce one specific to the TPP. I think that was a request from this group that outlines what the TPP does, what its role is in the region, and high-level themes from the plan. So it'll be a 1 to 2 pager that also will help you all if you want to share this information.
Very good. Member Geisler.
Thank you, Mr. Maskey. Just a question. Has there already been discussion about communicating to the large businesses in the area as well? Obviously, the transportation system is pretty key to commerce. It's people focused. That's what the 2050 plan is about. That's great. But I'm just wondering if there's any outreach to the major employers or anything like that as well.
I can't speak specifically to that, but I do know that the regional economic framework has been out in community in recent history, but I don't know the details of the outreach that they're doing with the business community.
Thank you.
You bet.
Member Bradley.
Yes, I was wondering, so I was a part of like the equity policy group, and this would be something good even to send to those group members because a lot of them are from different parts of the community. And they would be able to even send some of the notices or at least the comment link to like the NAACP and other groups that touch more, like a more diverse, wide diverse audience or whatever. So I was just wondering, are you looking at other type of events, so like Open Streets or Pin Fest and some of the other things and having kind of like the map in your plan out displayed there and things like that?
I don't have a full list of all the events that we're planning to attend, but many of those are places that we already have a presence. Either Metro Transit's going to be there or our community development team. So we're looking for events to attend. A lot of them are already booked. So we can't get a new table, but we can go to ones and snap on to what Met Council employees are already doing. So we would love to do that. And in the traveling toolkit, it also is going to include some little blurbs, newsletter blurbs, those kinds of things that we would appreciate you sharing with your partners, and anybody in the equity group would be great as well, to send out to organizations to include in their communications so that we can drive more people to the social pinpoint site.
Thank you. Member Foster.
I have 2 questions. Do you have goals or expectations on the numbers of comments that you want to receive, that you're trying to hit?
That's an interesting question.
All good comments.
All good comments, yeah. I would answer that with my, if we had no comments, that means we did all the engagement that we needed to do ahead of time, but that's never the case. So I wouldn't say that there's a number that we're looking to reach. We're just trying to get a really diverse group of people to be aware of it and have the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Can I ask my second?
Sure, Member Foster.
What are the district convenings? Are those Met Council member district convenings?
I can't speak to the details of the convenings, but my understanding is that the community outreach team is working with council members to schedule, I think they're county-based meetings that are going to be covering both Imagine 2050 as well as other topics of interest to that particular area. So those, stay tuned. I think they're still in planning.
Cool.
Probably happening in September, I think.
I'm excited to hear from my Met Council member.
Yeah.
Around this.
That's exciting.
Mayor Winchell.
Oh, I was just pointing at Amity.
Oh. Pointing at Amity? All right, very good. Member Vaughn and Member Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to both of you for your hard work on this. I think my question is connected to what Member Bradley was asking about and just that importance of making sure that folks of a whole range of demographic groups have that voice at the table. 100%. Are there particular learnings from the last times that we've reached out for public comment where, ooh, we fell short with this group and now here's some particular moves we want to make, whether that's, race, national origin, language groups, pieces like that you can speak to?
That's a really great question. And what I would say is that in the past, we haven't been as good in our public comment periods at collecting demographic information. We've pretty much tried to leave the bar pretty low for people to actually comment. And when you start asking them personal information, they start to back out. So we are including a set of demographic questions in our social pinpoint site so that we can get a good baseline for who we're reaching, and that's a in time assessment that we can do, and we can do more outreach. What I will also add to that is that with all of the plans, they've done a lot of outreach in specific populations as they've been building the plan. And so when I say, I hope we get nothing but good comments or no comments, I say that a little facetiously, but I also believe that we've done a much better job this time around at doing that upfront engagement and doing it very targeted and very specific to some of the people that don't typically engage with us on this kind of an effort.
Yeah, and I would just add, Sarah was actually the contract manager for a new approach that we had to have an equity-specific engagement contract in transportation. So we have, throughout the last 2 years, we've been making a lot of those connections, building that network that we can just easily share with because we have the network built in. And that's a huge improvement over the last time.
Yeah, that speaks to the closing the feedback loop. We want to make sure that they know that their input made a difference.
Thank you.
Yes.
Member Barber, then Mayor Winchell.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things. I think when we look back over the public comment periods, like say for the 2018 TPP updates or some of these, or even the recent tips, we did get a lot of comments. So it wasn't necessarily like the volume of comments, but certain groups with a lot of comments. I think we have been able to take that information and build it into this current version of the TPP. So we're listening and trying to build these things in as we go. But I think it's really critical to what everyone's saying is really kind of spread it around and make sure we're getting lots of different perspectives because I've been saying all along, I think because the TPP work group and our support staff has done I'm really proud of this work. Like we've done a lot of work and I feel it's a much more people-focused plan than maybe we've had historically because we did a lot of the work up front rather than going out and trying to have people react to it later. That said, I still expect a bunch of comments and I hope that, we can take those comments and make it even better. So just as a final thing, again, thank you for everyone who participated. Thank you very much to Cole and his staff for keeping us all on track and keeping us organized and heading us in the direction so we could have things to respond to all the time. So all the work is much appreciated.
Other questions? All right.
Mayor.
Oh, Member Johnson. Oh, excuse me, Mayor. Excuse me, sorry. Then Member Johnson.
Sorry, this time I do want to say something.
Yeah.
Have you thought about, there's a lot of festivals and fairs, county fairs and things like that? Because I think that brings such a cross mix of people. They're not necessarily county related, but they're kind of all over. And I think that branching out to those county fairs and city events are a good opportunity to get the people that otherwise will never get to those folks. So I don't know if those are things I know there's Carver County Fair, Scott County Fair. We've got big doings coming up the end of July, but I think that would be a way to really gather. Well, and you can do the state fair, yeah.
Well, we are doing the state fair, but not for this.
Yeah. So it just depends how much of an outreach you really want to go, because I think that would really hits a lot of people.
Yes, thank you for that suggestion. We have not looked into that as far as attending county fairs. But if there are city-based events or county-based events that you would like to have us a presence at, we are happy to be there. Just let us know and we can pull a team together to come and table at an event. I feel like we might be a little late at the county fair level. I think they need like lots of headroom to get places set and all of that. But anything else that you can think of that's within your own community that you'd like us to attend, please do reach out. We would be happy to.
Thank you.
Very good. Member Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple questions. One, this comes up a lot with just sort of local things. I live in Minneapolis. There we have a large population that's immigrant, doesn't speak English as their primary language. Even if they do, it might be challenging to read very technical documents. So I'm curious sort of what it looks like for interpretation, translation, partly just because the documents themselves are all in English and there's hundreds of pages worth, but also just for public comment. What does that look like for that process?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We do have a translation tool which on the Social Pinpoint site, which does automatically translate, and we understand that automatic translations are not probably the best, but it's a starting point. And so my understanding is that that is kind of the approach that we're taking on the translations. As far as the big documents themselves, we've been having a conversation about to what degree we need to translate those. Do we need to translate the entire documents? How, what is the best way to do that? Because as you said, these are extremely dense documents and hard enough for every day people to get through. And, how effective will that be? And is there a better and more efficient way to do that? And so we are looking into that.
If I can have one more?
Yes.
And this one just is more of what does it look like for incorporating the comments in? So is that something that staff takes the comments, it begins putting them in, and then we see that draft with the changes, or what does that process look like?
Yeah, so that's the unclear timeline. It really depends on the comments that we get. But typically speaking, we'll come to this group with an information item with some of the biggest themes. We're not going to tell you every single wording change that is recommended for us. Get your feedback, maybe have some proposed edits depending on the topic, and then bring it back for an action item at a later time. I think it really depends on how much content we plan to change, whether we share that with you all like a month in advance so you can look through the specific proposed changes. So we kind of have a 2 to 3 month buffer before final adoption to figure some of that out. But it certainly will start with an information item at this group with some of the big themes and our proposed responses.
Thank you.
Good. All right. So I think the mayor was disappointed you're not going to go to the county fairs.
I will say, send them to us though, because we can always look into it.
We can always look into it. If there are opportunities, we want to get out there as much as we can.
You might want to get out there. I mean, he's going to be in the bareback riding championship. Bronco riding for seniors.
Stop that.
Maybe I'm going to go.
Could be his last rodeo.
Not my first rodeo, though.
Maybe one closing comment, Mr. Chair, if there's no other comments, is that, 10 years ago, the timeline for this and what's the future item on this agenda, the regional solicitation evaluation, was a lot closer. This is, a couple of years ahead of the next regional solicitation, and we think that's helpful. So just a note that when this is all said and done, we're already starting to think about how to incorporate this into the next solicitation. This is a key, I think the biggest first step to really kicking off the update of the regional solicitation beyond just the informal discussions we've been having. So big part of your work is starting with this piece.
Yeah, that's a really important comment based on other circumstances in other years where we've had a little more time compression.
Yeah.
And this will give us time, and both with the policy maker working group too, we've absorbed comments from participants in the process, but the regular citizen on the street, we haven't heard much from them yet, so that might be influential with us too on the policy making side. So thanks for that heads up on that. The recommended motion is that the Transportation Advisory Board recommend the release of the draft 2050 Transportation Policy Plan for public review and comment. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Holy.
Clamoring to, was it Member Barber? Or? Yep. All right, and then it was over here, Member Jenkins?
Seconds.
Yeah. We treat both sides of the room equally here. And, okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the Action Transmittal 2024-30, which is the release of the 2050 TPP plan for public review and comment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 2024-30 is adopted. All right, and then we, before we get to the heart of the meeting, we got one more matter to deal with here, 2024-32. And I think Chair Hager and I think Kari Festvog from MnDOT have this matter.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. 2024-32, the 2024 Highway Safety Improvement Program selection. In coordination with the regional solicitation every 2 years, MnDOT conducts a solicitation for the Highway Safety Improvement Program. This current solicitation is for projects in program years 2028 and 2029. Projects fall within two categories. They're either proactive or reactive. Proactive projects are those where safety improvements are proposed in locations based on proven safety strategies, for example, cable median barriers or shoulder widening. And reactive projects also rely on proven safety strategies and are dedicated at specific locations based on where crash data has indicated a need for further investment in safety. For this 2024 solicitation, the total amount applied for was $93 million, while only $31 million is available. TAC unanimously recommends approval of the item as shown. The recommended motion is that the Transportation Advisory Board approve the attached 20 projects for funding through the HSIP solicitation and their inclusion in the 2026 to 2029 TIP. And then I'll just have you note that there are 2 additional projects on that list, and these projects are outside of the MPO. Therefore, they're not included in the recommended motion as they do not require TAB approval and do not need to show up in the TIP.
Questions for Chair Hager?
I'll move approval.
All right, we can get a discussion going here. I think they had a presentation. Did you want to, everything else you wanted to add to that?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, so just stand by. We got a motion for
I'll
approval.
second.
Got a second by Member Bradley. Okay, let's go to any discussion on the matter. All right, all those in favor of adoption of the recommended motion involving action transmittal 2024-32 say aye.
Aye.
Carried. 2024-32 is approved in its recommended form. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Going on to 2024-31, which is our 2024 Regional Solicitation Project Selection. Steve, do you want to start with the presentation? Okay, I'll give the tax summary after Steve's presentation.
All right, thank you, Chair Hager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a brief presentation here, and want to just make sure it's clear what the motion before you is, and then we'll have Chair Hager come back up with the motion and any other discussion at TAC. So today is the action item before you. We've had several months of information items, and then this item from here does go to the Transportation Committee and then the full Met Council for concurrence. So the end of the process would be the end of October here, or August 28th, that is. What we heard last month at TAB. So these are the key points that we brought to the technical committees. A general sentiment to try and build consensus on one of the scenarios or a combination of the scenarios. Remember, we brought those 3 funding options to you. Examine more additional over-programming. Currently, we had about 10% over-programming. You'll see the motion before you has about 14% over-programming. So that was one of the asks of this group, was to see what you could get by putting a little bit more over-programming. Seemed to be some level of consensus on funding those last 2 Safe Routes to School projects on the list. So again, there's 10 projects submitted there, and we'd fund the last 2, number 9 and 10 on the list. And we did ask you last month about if you wanted us to fund an additional transit modernization project. You may remember that transit from a modal percentage standpoint was a little bit low, and asked if you did want to fund that last transit project. We didn't have, I don't think, clear direction back from this body as to what to do on that. So we took that feedback the next week and had funding and programming, and Chair Michael Thompson from the city of Plymouth is the chair of that committee, and probably had our best funding and programming committee meeting in the last 2 years. We said, this is the feedback from TAB. What can we do to kind of bring this together and build some consensus? And so Chair Michael Thompson and that committee said, well, the 2 scenarios we heard most about at this TAB level were the options 2 and 3, that would be the safety scenario and the bike ped scenario. They're not very far apart from one another, especially if TAB asks us to put in a little bit more revenue and overprogram a little bit more. There's only a few projects that are separate. So can we bring these 2 scenarios that TAB seemed to be gravitating towards and make a new scenario, which they did, called the 4th scenario, the hybrid option. They also added in their motion, the 2 Safe Routes to School projects that were talked about here, and did think that it was worthwhile to fund one more of those transit projects, a $2 million transit modernization project in the city of Eagan. So that was the motion they put before you, and usually people that have been on TAP for a while, we don't get a motion on a specific funding option that often from our technical committees. So this is a little different than in the past. Usually it's a pros and cons of each of the scenarios that they send back to you for consideration. But in this case, they felt like they had done some good work and brought forth a scenario that combined really the best portions of what they heard from TAB. So how did they get there? So if you add in all the funding sources, both the active transportation and the federal, it'd be about $282 million in total. We fund those additional projects by increasing over programming by about $10 million. In addition, there was a few small bike ped projects that we recommended to the Brian and Glenn's active transportation work group that instead of using federal dollars on it, that it made more sense from a programming perspective to flip those to non-federal sources. So one of them was a Safe Routes to School project, the city of Arden Hills, $1 million. Great project for them, but to federalize a $1 million project for a medium-sized community and have them go through all the hoops with federalizing a project didn't make sense. So we brought that discussion back to the chair and vice chair and then on to the active transportation work group last month. And they agreed with that general sentiment. Let's match the best funding sources to the projects to get the most kind of bang for our buck with the projects that TAB wants to do. So you'll see in the motion that we went from what was last month 14 active transportation projects to 17 active transportation projects for the pilot. And I will say people who are on that list are already contacting us, raring to go on those bike bed projects, even as soon as this year. So people are definitely excited about that new funding source that you have available to you from the active transportation sales tax. So before I turn it over to Chair Hager, I do want to go flip over to the actual item. Let's see if we have it here. You'll see there is a pros and cons list that was developed by TAC. That was, scroll back up here, and I'll go through a few of those for you, but I do want to scroll down and just a little bit here. So we're on the action transmittal here, and there's several pages of tables and charts here. So one of the items that we looked at from a technical perspective was the key outcome. So we looked at this hybrid option number 4, and some of the comments we heard from the technical folks were a lot of the great outcomes that you're getting. So if you look at the far right side of this table, key outcomes option 4, you're funding the majority of the equity bonus projects, the project that scored high in equity. You're funding essentially all of the highest scoring safety projects that were submitted in the solicitation. We looked at it a couple different ways. In the roadway projects, you're getting the highest monetized crash benefit, that being a nearly $300 million of crash cost savings, improving over 500 intersections with ADA improvements, which I think is a noble cause that we've heard about here. And then the spread of investments, you are getting investment in all 7 counties. Investment will be in 52 different cities or townships, which I think is actually quite amazing when you think of any solicitation process that you can have. Maybe they're not the applicant themselves, but you are seeing a lot of different parts of the metro being funded. And as far as applicants themselves, 32 different applicants. And so those are some of the high-level kind of summary statements on what you would be getting for your money and investment. Now onto the table, just so people are kind of clear on what the motion is. The hybrid option here is on the far right side, number 4. And again, what that is, it funds every project in both the safety, number 2, and every project in the bike ped, number 3. So those 2 scenarios, plus 2 safe routes to school projects, plus 1 transit modernization project. So as you scroll down, you'll see some of those new projects that we've added, kind of in a teal. Here's the one transit project. And you can see some of the places where we're showing the new active transportation projects as well. So just wanted to make sure everyone knew kind of what are the projects, what is this hybrid option that's being proposed to you. And I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint and the motion before you and ask Chair Hager to come back up here.
All right, thanks, Steve. So I'll be brief. Much like funding and programming, TAC did vote unanimously in support of the hybrid option, which is amazing. So I just want to acknowledge the work of Met Council staff and funding and programming committee members who worked to develop this scenario. It really is in the spirit of TAB's feedback and advancing priorities across each of the funding categories. There was some conversation at TAC. We did talk about the 14% over programming, and ultimately the group agreed that it was a reasonable amount, given that when you look at the level of over programming across the entire TIP, that calculation brings you closer to 10%. And then thinking about the projects in each program year, this level of over programming ensures we do have enough projects that are being developed to manage movement within the TIP and not leave any funds on the table. We did note that when recalculated, the transit category still does fall short of that minimum 25%. However, that's simply because we changed the denominator in the calculation by increasing the overall funding that we're looking at. So again, TAC was unanimous in their support of the hybrid option, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Chair Hager? So it sounds like they took the TAB's advice to heart. We were looking for consensus, and they set the stage for that by unanimously supporting the hybrid option.
That's right, Mr. Chair. It feels good after the last one, so yes.
All right. Questions, comments, motion? Commissioner Gittell?
I will make the motion. I do have comments if somebody wants a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. I want to say that as Hennepin County, we looked at this too, and I want to say, first of all, to my colleagues around the table, that was great conversation we had. There was a lot that came out about that, about the needs that everybody had around safety, around equity and accessibility, and that got put in here. That's one of the things I think the hybrid option has some of the greatest outcomes for safety, equity, and accessibility. And we did talk about the overprogramming. We could increase that, and I'm excited to see that you took that to heart. I want to thank the staff because you really did encompass everything in here. But also, I think I want to also say how creative you were in making sure that those safe routes to schools and changing the way we funded it so that we could get it in. That makes a lot more sense to not put that under the federal program. But that just shows the hard work that you're doing. And I just want to say that I wholeheartedly support the hybrid option. And I want to thank you because everybody made out really well in the metro area with these projects this way too. And we always are down at the end and we're always trying to divvy up who should give up a project. Usually I do, then out of Hennepin County to make it equitable. And this got them all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other comments? Member Dugan, then Mayor Winchell.
Oh, please, go ahead first.
Go.
Defer to the mayor.
I as well like the hybrid plan. I think that's, compared to what happened in our last solicitation, I think that this is gonna bring us back together. I think we really kind of separated when we had a one vote separation on what we were voting in favor of. And it sounds like that's, I mean, we haven't voted yet, but that's a pretty strong consensus so far across the room. But I still, we've talked about this in the policy. We definitely have to look at something, new scoring process for the multi-use trails and bicycle facilities. Because, and I don't mean to pick on any of it, but 9 of the 12 projects are Hennepin County. I think that the fact that there are other areas that just don't have the population base to compete, and knowing that they're not putting in for them. And I just think that, and like I said, we had that conversation in our policy meeting, that we have to look at some other way to make that multi-use trails and, you know, and Brian talks a lot about how we need to be able to do more without cars. It's not happening where the cars are that don't have other means. And I just think that we, you know, like I say, this is fine this year. We're not gonna touch it. But I think as we move forward and onward, we need to look at scoring on this. Because it's based on density and nobody can compete.
You support the recommended motion?
Oh, yes.
But these are the comments you think
But I'm
for
just-
on a going
it's
forward
just-
basis, always that effort to improve things. Someone else had their hand up, right? No? Oh, yeah, Member DeGan, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to echo or mirror Commissioner Gattel's comments. And thank staff and Steve particularly and Elaine. I watched the funding and programming video and it was impressive. And the amount of work that went into it and the hybrid they came out with. And I also want to thank folks for letting me know on the side after I proposed that 2 Safe Routes to School projects be included. Some smart members took me aside and said, you don't want to do it that way. You don't want to federalize it. It's too expensive. So as Commissioner Gattel said, so I think we need to keep that in the back of the mind that with the flexibility of our active transportation and some of these smaller projects, we can get them done quicker, faster, and cheaper, or less expensive. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo what Commissioner Gattel said. Appreciation to staff, appreciation for listening to us, appreciation for the respect that each of us have for one another and the opinions that we have regarding this very, very important work. I know a number of comments that I make during a number of these meetings is that bike and ped is included in roadways. And we ran some numbers over in Anoka County, and I am in full support of the hybrid motion, by the way. But if you look at the breakdown in the different categories, for roadways, almost $150 million is allocated towards that category. 29 million of that is for bike ped. So I just wanted to mention that because I continue to say, you know, bike ped is included in roadways without the data to back it up. So I just felt it appropriate to back it up, my comments with that data specifically to this solicitation process. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner. All right. Yeah, it's been a journey, but we're at a spot now. I think we're looking around the room where we could vote on this recommended action 2024-31. We've got a recommended motion that the TAB adopt the funding projects in the hybrid option 4, fund all the projects in the bike ped and safety options category, plus the final transit modernization project and final 2 Safe Routes to School projects. And then with that active transportation project money funding the 17 active transportation projects shown as part of each of the attached funding options. That's the recommended motion. Hearing nothing further from a discussion standpoint, would you please indicate, all of you that are in favor of adoption of 2024-31, adopting that hybrid option 4, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Wow, unanimous. We need to get the 2 major parties in here to see how civility works. Follow us for a year as we go on the journey of treating each other with respect. All right, that was really quite a fantastic piece of work, everybody. Everybody involved had such great input all along the pathway to this, excuse me, this success point. So thank you so much to everybody on this organization, everybody on the staff for getting us to a point where we could really look at carefully at the options that we wanted to exercise and do the best thing that we could for our communities and our region at the same time. So thanks to that. Now, wow, this is going to be a shorter meeting than we expected. I think we've got some evaluation, we got the information updates. I had mentioned earlier that we had the policymaker work group conversation before the meeting started. And Kieran, do you want to come up here and introduce yourself to the TAB? This is someone who's been enlisted to assist us, who's been looking at some of the peer region works. And do go ahead and identify yourself and tell folks on the TAB about yourself.
Sure. My name is Kieran Moletsky. I'm in Denver. I work for HGR, which is a consulting firm that's on the team supporting the regional solicitation evaluation the Metropolitan Council is currently engaged in. Have been working mostly on the peer region assessment and interview tasks so far, trying to understand what other people are doing and what lessons we could learn nationally that we could bring to address some of the issues I heard folks in this room bring up today, and hopefully help support this group in identifying some ways to improve what is already clearly a very successful process going forward.
Good. Anybody wish to ask any inquiry of Kieran? Okay. I just wanted to indicate that some of the good work that they did, in addition to talking to some of the peer regions, and you might identify those peer regions for us too.
Sure. The 6 peer, so we did a desktop analysis of 15 to 20 regions across the country. Those we interviewed included Denver, Atlanta, Kansas City, Columbus, San Francisco, Seattle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's Denver Regional Council of Governments, Seattle, San Francisco, that use this, what they call regional sub-regional process model. And then, of course, we have a more centralized regional process model. So does Kansas City and Columbus and Atlanta. And I think some of the, and then they also interviewed people that have been involved in our solicitation process through some listening sessions and got feedback. And some of the interesting things there, I think, are things that we can employ as we go about in this policymaker work group, making recommendations to the full tab, to be thinking about some of the things that were commented on by stakeholders that they thought should change, some things that they really liked. And so thinking about the things that we heard that the listeners heard that some stakeholders think should stay the same, the open and transparent process. They appreciated the space for deliberation as part of the decision-making process. Past projects selected provided benefit to the region. Liked having a data-driven process and the general support for some level of modal balance. All those things were really important to the stakeholders that were interviewed through these listening sessions. Some of the things that we can improve on, and we've already had some conversations about how to address some of these potential challenges, if you will, or things that we think need to be addressed, making the application easier to complete. Projects in more suburban and rural areas do not compete well in the bike ped categories, as the mayor noted earlier. We need to think about that a little bit, especially with this active transportation funding available, and both Brian and Glenn had some good thoughts along those lines just on a preliminary basis. Projects should be better aligned with regional policy goals. Current structure does not consider nuance of local government context. We didn't know what that meant, so we talked about that a little bit. I'm still not sure I know exactly what it means. Make it easier to create more opportunities for local governments to participate. Well, we're thinking about ways to do that too. I know in some of the listening sessions I was involved in with respect to that Metropolitan Governance Council task force formed in the legislature, particularly down in Scott County, I think some of the more distant parts of the region feel like their voice isn't being heard and it doesn't matter, and they feel a little bit isolated. And so we need to do something about that. Some of those townships, and I'll just use by example in Scott County, that might be further out, closer to the edge of our region, the MPO governance area. So we've got some things that we're going to be working on between now and October in the policymaker work group, and then we're going to be bringing these ideas back to you and discuss them with you. I think to the extent that they're going to do a little survey of the policymaker work group, I think we should survey the whole tab. And in conjunction with the next solicitation, if there are goals or ideas that you have that you think we should be addressing in that next solicitation, get those ideas to Elaine, or we'll do them by survey of everybody on the tab, all 34 members. And then the policymaker work group will have a lot of good material to work with, I think, as we try to ever improve this regional solicitation model that we have. So thanks for being with us. We look forward to working with you, along with Molly Seward. Is Molly still here? Yep. Yeah, thanks, Molly, for your good work as well. And here we're embarking on that journey. So is there somebody?
A couple of them.
Oh, Commissioner, and then Commissioner, both commissioners.
I always have comments, I know. I just wanted to talk about these particular, the 6 agencies and different ones that you use for the cohorts. First of all, that's very great. I really appreciate this, but is it Kansas City, Missouri? Or is it Kansas City, Kansas? Or is it the greater Kansas City area? Are they equal in size and scope when we look at all of these regions, since, I'm not involved in all this policy always?
Sure, and I believe the project team, and so Steve and Molly as the project leadership we have some documentation of some of this process behind how the regions are selected that we can help to circulate with this group as well. The answer to your first question is it is both Kansas City, Kansas, and Missouri. That's the MPO represents both cities and the region there. And the answer to your other question, they were selected from that broader list some of the regions were selected based on their similarity with this region in terms of population or geographic distribution of population. Some were selected for other reasons because they had unique features of their solicitation process that the project team or members of TAB or others wanted more exploration of. And some were for other reasons that they were similar to the region. So Atlanta, for example, I think was selected because it had a similar lack of growth restrictions geographically to what the region here has. So it's a variety of trying to capture a wide range of perspectives.
That would be interested to see. I'd be interested and I think some of us here have traveled those areas. I've certainly been to Atlanta, I've been to Seattle, I've been to Kansas City, been to Columbus, Ohio. So I think a lot of us might have a perspective because a lot of us have used those roads from one time or another. And it'd be interesting for us to compare and contrast our own experiences with what you're seeing and how they're addressing it.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Bingham?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for allowing me back into the meeting. Tampa Bay had.
Trial basis.
Thank you, trial basis. Tampa Bay, which Commissioner Gattell and I were just in, had a great trolley. Columbus, Ohio has a C-bus. Different things to look at, I think. And Commissioner Martinson was there too. My question, I have two of them. One, is the policy makers group and the active transportation working group considering legislative changes that would be needed to actually get at the root problem of the regional solicitation issue? The good mayor brought up about weighted voting and different things that might require. I mean, there's some changes that might be needed that would have legislative requirements to make those changes necessary, Mr. Chair.
No,
is the policy group considering legislative changes as well?
I'd say it's premature to be thinking about that. I think as we work through this process of thinking about how we can address some of these particular issues that have been raised that reflect concerns about the existing process, I think that would be naturally part of the conversation as to whether or not there's something in the work that we do that would require some sort of a legislative sort of involvement or relief, but I don't see that so far. Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Member
Chair.
Martinson.
So if I may respond to that, not directly to that, but to a related, I guess, issue that we discussed in the policymaker group earlier today is that, so this is a part of where the active transportation work group comes to bear on the regional solicitation policy working group. So the legislative changes that happened in the 2023 and 2024 legislative sessions did bring us a regular recurring source of funding for active transportation throughout the region. 4.3% of that comes to us for allocation, 17% to the counties, 41.5%, I believe, of what the counties get is earmarked specifically for active transportation. So that's a big float of money. And one of the ways that, so we're discussing in the active transportation work group how we can think about using those funds and probably using them separate from the regional solicitation funds so as to avoid supplanting, which is not allowed by the current existing legislative language. And that might mean that we could create programs, for instance, I'm just throwing this out. We haven't discussed this in the working group, but it's just one way that, so there was a concern that was raised about the fact that rural and ex-urban areas of the metro don't get much bike ped funding because, well, the RBTN scoring factor weights up the places that have the RBTN segments in them, and pedestrian gets, safe routes to school and not much else. But we could, for instance, use some portion of the state, the sales tax money to specifically earmark to promote the building of trails and bike infrastructure in places where it hasn't been built, where municipalities haven't been investing in it or haven't been applying. I mean, even though we've got, 53 municipalities, I think, got money out of this regional solicitation, but I believe there's 180 in the region, right? Or is it 120? It's a large number. So that's still a pretty small percentage of municipalities that are getting money from the regional solicitation. So the active transportation part of that, to address the bike and ped part of it, we have a different source of funding now. That doesn't require any legislative changes other than those that we've already got, so.
And Mr. Chair, that's a good point, because you can use active transportation now for bike ped. So these are the types of discussion that I think we have to have broader on this board. And you never know what may come from that. That would need legislative change. So I hope, I like your timeline. I really like your timeline because it might go right up to the legislative session, which if there was any legislative changes needed, that would be coinciding right with that. And I do like your idea of surveying the whole TAB board and giving the counties an opportunity. Hennepin kind of does their own thing when it comes to getting feedback from their members, but like I know Washington County would have a workshop about that, and I believe more of the suburban counties would have workshops on that to get feedback from the members on it. And I would appreciate that opportunity. I think Commissioner Karwoski would like to know our feedback on that as well. So I think surveying the whole TAB board to allow for that feedback would be great, and I like that direction. So thank you.
Yeah, so this is a great illustration of an issue that surfaced in the policymaker work group as a result of the listening sessions that were taking place. Mayor Winchell raises the issue here, but Brian Martinson was quick to raise the issue of, well, one way to deal with this issue is to use, we've got this active transportation money now. If we think that there's been inequity involved with respect to the use of this bike ped money, in more rural areas of the metro or suburban and ex-urban areas, we can address it potentially that way. We haven't had that discussion, but my sense was that there was kind of a soft support for that, with an unspoken support, I guess, in the room when he raised that as an idea about how to address one particular issue that surfaced that people were concerned about relative to our existing regional solicitation model.
Well, and Mr. Chair, as it was said by Commissioner Jepson, that there's already requirements in a lot of these projects that bike peds pedestrian trails are already required in it. If you look at, I've said this a gazillion times, and I'm not going to take over the meeting, but I've said it a gazillion times. Transit and the active transportation, we'll just go with that, looks different in the suburbs as it does in the urban areas, so.
Yep. Member Geisler.
I think it's also, we brought up in the work group, TAB also has been addressing this in other ways that didn't require massive shifts by creating spot mobility, because those are more competitive outside of the core, by creating the A-minor rule to make sure that smaller roads are getting funding, to make sure the new market guarantee on transit was also making sure funding was heading in, not just centralizing into one space. So I think we have the toolkit available to us to make adjustments without needing a huge amount of outside support to solve some of the concerns that we saw that came back from the feedback sessions. But one of the other things to Commissioner Jepson's point about the funding from roads that are producing bike ped results, we also can look at some bike ped projects that are, when we rebuild a street to make dedicated guideway for bike lanes, well, that's really rebuilding the road in a way that also provides safer bike ped transportation. Now, it leads on the bike ped because that's the reason for it, but we're also still rebuilding the road. And so it does beg the question of, is our modalities really not even what we think they are? It's not 100% dollars for asphalt on roads. It's not 100% just for bicyclists and pedestrians. There are aspects of all of these projects, and we've been really talking about, especially in the new TVP, about multimodal and interconnected natures. And so something that to think about is, do we need to revamp our thinking about how we want to do this? Do we want to focus on solutions rather than a mode funding or other things? And this is our opportunity to really step back and rebuild that. We sometimes lose down here is We see the final score. We don't see all the little detailed scores at this table. We can ask for them, we can get them if we want them, but that's really how we decide who is at the top of the list and who's not, is the scoring. And the scoring is what drives where the dollars go. So this is our chance to really say, if you think the wrong projects are scoring, to fundamentally change how we think about allocating this, but not totally breaking our processes and upending what our staff has to do to apply for them.
Yeah, good, thanks for those thoughts. One of the things that concerned me today was on Connie's report out that fatalities are up. You know, and here we are making this effort around safety, one of our key priorities, and fatalities are still up. And so as you think about suggestions that you might make through Elaine or through the survey response that gets sent out, we should be thinking about, are there some, you know, from MnDOT's perspective, are there some things that you're observing that we should be thinking about from a TAB organization about safety, because we all have a great concern about that for our fellow residents.
Was that a question?
No, just
I will, I wanted to jump into this little conversation a little bit. It felt like you're like, we're keeping score, you know, there's a roadway project. We did some bike paths along with that, or we did a bike path project we had to fix. I hope we don't get into that. I hope we don't have to keep track of that. Ideal to a citizen, I mean, anybody that I know in my family and friends, they have no clue who funds what, who pays for what. And it would be ideal if it was one source of money. You don't have to worry about color of money, jurisdictional issues, who owns what, and that's my goal. There's certain things that we can't do. If you know, constitutionally, the trunk highway dollars, it's been written pretty strict back in the day, and it says it's been determined that it has to be roads and bridges, and I think that's a narrow way of looking at it, but that's the Constitution, and it can be taken up to look at that. But I love the idea that was brought up by Brian about the active transportation dollars to be even mentioning at a TAB meeting, at a metro area meeting, mentioning and thinking about the rural folks. I think that says a lot. Imagine you talk about that publicly and the rural folks hear about that. That says a lot when one entities who fought each other for a long time, they think that we get everything in metro, the metro guys think the rural gets everything and all of that. I think that goes a long way. I've said the story many times. We had an interchange here. We used to debate back in 05, 6, 169, 494, which is a metro interchange. And this room was filled up with the last day as we were trying to approve that. It was filled up with folks from Mankato and South Minnesota. So they were advocating for a project in the metro area. So I think that's an awesome solution to be able to do that. So and not fight over dollars, but I know the politics makes us protective of our dollars, my money, my road, and it would be great if we would give a little and then you'll get a little. So maybe I'm naive about that, but I think that would be a good way of going forward.
Okay, good. Thanks, Connie. Mayor?
Mr. Chair, I just like the comment about safety. I honestly believe that we are building our roads safer than ever. I think that our issues are society. We're driving down the road at 70 miles an hour texting. It's the distracted drivers that is causing probably 80 to 85% of the accidents that are happening out there. I'm amazed how many people that I go by or go by me and their eyes are glued to the phone. I think it's a society change that is gonna need to be changed to help with, I mean, we talked a few meetings back about trying to get to zero death. I don't think we can ever do that with the distraction that's happening in our society with these things. These things should be almost, if you want to cut down on accidents, take these away, put them away, because that's, I think, is where our biggest issue is. And it's not only cars. Twice in the last 2 days, I've seen kids going by on a bicycle, traveling quickly, no hands, 2 hands on a controller of a car, what do you call them, remote control car in front of them. They're doing 20 miles an hour on a trail. It's a society thing as much as anything. I mean, I think obviously accidents happen, but there's a lot about, it's the distracted drivers that are really causing issues.
You asked me about safety. I think I was born and raised in Germany and grew up there, and and we're trying to become like Europe. Seems like all our efforts here, although we're about 40, 50 years behind. But I recall it. I know for sure in Germany, bike and pedestrians have the right of way when it comes to cars. But where they intersect cars turning or the bike, so they will stop, and that's how they are trained. That's how they go to school. And as you know, Germany has some strict schools for driving, and because they have high speeds, and so it takes a lot of effort. But they grow up that way, and it takes generations to get there. And maybe that's where we need to focus on as well.
Well, Member Geisler, did you want to say something else?
I just have one point to the safety thing. We had an unfortunate incident in the county, maybe just cover a little bit where we had another traffic fatality. I think one of the concerns we have is some of the problems are our roads were designed a long time ago, and the roads need to be rebuilt to make them safe for pedestrians, where pedestrians are intersecting with the cars. And unfortunately, with some of the legislative changes and the goals that are out there, sometimes it takes spending money on roads to make the roads safe, to keep the people in the cars away from each other. Grade separation is a good thing. You don't expect a pedestrian on a freeway. There's a good reason for that. Unfortunately, we've started to turn some of our 2, 3, 4-lane divided roads into freeways, I think, per the social conversation we've been having. But, it's to that smart system design concept. And that's where my points are of, it's not about keeping track of whether roads or bike ped are winning or not. I think it's about delivering the right type of project and what we need and what's the outcome. And also the goal of all of this is to not have a better process. The goal is the projects. That's what we want. We want the projects for the people to make our place better, safer, simpler, easier all the way. That's the end result. And so, when we're looking at traffic fatalities or pedestrian versus vehicle fatalities, and the answer is we need to rebuild the road. That gets really hard when we're talking about, well, what about lane miles? What about GHG? What about all these other restrictions? But in the reality is we need to change how the roads are built, and it might flow better, and it might result in slightly higher VMT, but if people don't get hurt, is that what's more important? And I think those measures can be in conflict and can also be complementary. It'll depend on the projects. We have to keep all that in mind.
Member Foster, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I feel like I need to say this as a transit mode rep. One of the best ways to move to safer roads for bikers, for people who are walking, rolling, for people who are choosing to drive, is to make our transit system really a 7-county metro transit system that allows people to move quickly and efficiently, so that, for example, you don't have to wait 10 minutes for your bus to come so that you can time it to catch the train that comes at 2:23, but that you just know your bus will be there every 8 minutes, and it does not matter. You don't have to memorize the schedule. You don't have to have the app on your phone. You literally can walk out the door and go to your meeting and know that you will be there on time. I think we get so focused on trying to solve safety is not a short-term issue, so I'm not trying to be dismissive of it, but we get so focused on what can we solve right now instead of what's the system that we need so that everybody can make safer decisions for their own community. So I feel like I just needed to say that.
Yeah, no, thank you
As
for
a
that.
transit rep.
Yeah, thank you for
Can I quickly add to that? Because that's a really great comment, first of all. Thank you for bringing that up. The other piece of that is if we truly prioritize transit and pedestrians, they would have the right of way everywhere like they do in other parts of the world, and they would be on time. We don't do that here. And when you bring it up, you're laughed out. So
That is
it's
also-
just not acceptable yet.
Sorry.
Thanks, Commissioner. All right. Well, nice conversation, good conversation. Thanks for sticking around. And as we depart today, I want to thank Commissioner Martinson again for her good work here and wish her the best. And to all of you, I say thanks again for just the way you comport yourselves and conduct yourselves personally and professionally. It's been really a great experience here going through this hard work of trying to figure out how to spend a couple $100 million. So that's not always an easy thing to do, but it was, you sure made it look easy here. If somebody came to this meeting alone, they'd think, wow, it's not that hard to work. So, but we know otherwise. So we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.
Say my part.
Not bad.